I am. I'm live. It's Dia here, live with Dia on my tiny, teeny, itsy bitsy little YouTube channel. I'm just experimenting. It's April and experimenting, going live, see what it feels like, see if I want to do more of it, see if it brings value to my community of professional badasses. And I have to say today, Wednesday, the 22nd, I'm a little bit nervous because I'm coming on to not just talk to you about a best practice or like teach you a lesson that's come from, my years and years of coaching, but actually to tell you a little bit about my story, which feels kind of awkward, and it's not packaged up in a talk. It's just going to be me sharing with you the story of the one ask that I made that changed everything for me. It was nearly 20 years ago. And I actually didn't really realize that that's how I could identify it as the ask that changed everything until only like this last year, looking backwards. And I thought it would be relevant to share because I get a lot of questions from folks about how I got started, how to get going in their career, mostly when they want to jump off and do something on their own. I've been self-employed most of my adult life. I didn't have a job till I was 33, basically. I had stuff I was doing, but I didn't have a job. Hi, welcome. So I am going to be sharing a story and how I made an ask that changed everything. And I'm going to go live over here also on the Instagram. I know that last week this was a little glitchy here on YouTube. So I hope that it is not glitchy today. If it is, you can jump over onto my Instagram where I am also live. Hello, Instagram. So yeah, today I want to talk to you about, I want to come on here today and talk about the biggest ask I made in my career, the one that really changed everything. And interestingly, it wasn't a financial ask. Some of the conversations I have with the women that I work with in my workshops and talks around Ask Like an Auctioneer, which I'll talk about in a second, are around financial negotiations, the kinds of money asks that can change everything. And mine was not actually financial. It was really about sort of the kind of dream I had for myself and the kind of work that I wanted to do, and it feeling like an impossibility until it wasn't. And so I guess I'll just jump right in. Hello, welcome. So people ask me how I got started in my career, how I got to do the things that I've done in 20 years. So for those of you who might not know me, I'm Dia Bondi. I'm a longtime leadership communications coach. And last year, I launched a project called Ask Like an Auctioneer, aimed at helping 1 million women ask for more and get it, using everything I've learned from my crazy and wild impact hobby of auctioneering, which I do for women-led nonprofits and nonprofits that benefit women and girls about 10 times a year here in the Bay Area. It turns out what I notice is that what we use in auctioneering to make successful asks, raise money, and make a game-changing fundraising event for the nonprofits that I work with is also a whole set of tools that we can apply to our careers and to our dreams and to moving closer to our goals. So when I say I've been a longtime leadership communications coach, what I mean is I help leaders and entrepreneurs step into the most high stakes communications moments. Think pitches, presentations, all hands events, product launches, things where lots of people are listening and decisions are the potential for decisions to get made are present, and the lights, it's like lights, camera, action kind of moment. And my job is to help them craft their story. If I'm working with a bunch of strategists, as I have on some of my more high profile projects, I worked with a couple of Olympic bid teams, which kind of look like what you think of as a presidential campaign. We're working with script writers and strategists. Like, my job is to help craft the story, but also more importantly is to help to get the leader to catalyze him or herself into their most powerful version of their self, so that whatever the hell we decide is most important for them to say, they say it in a way that's really from the heart, aligned with who they are, and serves both their own leadership and also the mission of the moment. So I've gotten to have great adventures doing this work. And the story I'm going to tell you today is actually the thing that instigated it all for me. It was actually a very catalyzing moment for me where I had a choice to go big or not. And I chose to go big, and it paid off. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you about the biggest ask I ever made. And like I said, I launched this project called Ask Like an Auctioneer. And looking back, I didn't even really realize that the ask that I made that changed everything happened 20 years ago. I didn't even realize it actually until my husband said, I know you think that this thing that you launched this year is new, but it's actually not new. You've been doing this shit for a very long time. And in fact, remember that ask you made early on in your career? And he just flipped a bit in my brain. And I was like, yes, that is true. I have been. I just didn't really know I was doing it. And when I say it, I mean making big, huge, courageous asks, the kinds of asks that scare the crap out of you, so that I could get my foot in the door, so that I could transparently and courageously move the vision I had for myself forward. And it was wonky and hard and scary, but it paid off. So, I did make an ask like that, and I didn't really realize that I've been doing this for 20 years until I launched a project specifically dedicated to helping people make the kinds of asks that leave no money or opportunity on the table. So I'm going to tell you this story because maybe you are right now on the precipice of something big. Maybe you are going into this time of COVID into a moment where you are renegotiating everything. Maybe you've been laid off and you're looking at using this time as a career pivot. Maybe your business is changing as an outcome of this. Maybe it hasn't actually impacted you at all, and you still have a picture of a dream in your head that you want to pursue. And that I'm sharing this story with you so that in case you're looking to muster your own courage, to catalyze your own self so that you can make the kinds of asks that change everything, this might help you formulate that for yourself. So welcome to my office here in Berkeley, California. Maybe you can hear I have a train coming through, and that'll happen maybe a few times over the course of us being together. So here's the deal. I'm 46 years old, and I was a economics major, and I was really and I do nothing in my career related to economics. The only thing I really do related to economics is run my own household and vote. But I moved into that major because I had my very first coaching conversation ever with the head of the department. When I got invited to be an economics major with a form letter, I went to talk to the head and I said, hey, why should I be an economics major? And he said, well, what kind of impact do you want to have in the world? And the answer to that question was irrelevant. What mattered was that he asked me that question, and it set me onto a not just a path, but like a way of thinking about my future that was so rich and powerful for me. So I finished my economics degree. Literally, I had professors though that were like, I'm sorry, I think you are in the wrong department. Like marketing is down the hall, or, they would be like communications are down the hall, or social studies are down the hall. Like I don't know that I didn't belong, but I sure as hell didn't. Graduated, not at the top of my class, but I graduated with I think they called it something like a distinction award or something, which is basically a freaking personality award, right? Because I ran study clubs. I created, get-togethers for everyone. I put together, I was a personality in the department. Anyhow, I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or a backhanded compliment, but nonetheless, I was recognized for being additive in the department, even if it wasn't academically additive. So I finished school and I took a few interviews, the kinds of interviews you would expect to take when you go to pursue a career, which is the next step after you graduate with a degree in international economics. They were like analyst positions with the State Department and analyst positions where I would be monitoring bank consolidations for the World Bank and the IMF, you know? And I would get into these interviews sitting in a suit in a little cubicle, having a one-on-one with somebody who'd already been there for 30 years. And I would literally break out in sweats and like, I would want to just run screaming from the building. And the thought of having to start as an analyst and work my way up and work in a windowless cubicle for hours and hours every day and commute to do it. And it felt like it was going to just erase me off the face of the earth. And so I got real about that. And I spent the next year, maybe even more, getting a better understanding of what the field of having a career looked like. Now, during this whole time, I had been, all through college and after college, I had been teaching group fitness, if you can believe that, for gyms across my county. Like and it was great because I was on a 1099, meaning like I was an independent contractor in those days. That's how it was working. I got to run my own schedule. I could find subs as I wanted. I could come and go as I please. I didn't have to ask permission from anybody to do anything. All I did have to audition for classes. And if I was good enough, they'd book me. And sometimes I'd have 10 people in a class. Sometimes I'd have 5 people in the class. Sometimes I'd have 50 people in the class. And it really got me set up for sort of my performance self, right? I got to lead 50 people for 50 minutes with a microphone on my head. And I got to look competent and confident so that they can relax and trust me with their bodies for that time. And what I saw over the course of that time teaching group fitness was not just like people went from being able to do only a bent knee push-up to a straight leg push-up. That didn't matter to me. What really mattered was people would come into my classes and hide in the back, hide their bodies under big layers of hoodies and sweatshirts. They wouldn't talk to me. They were what I perceived as shy in the way of like trying to make themselves small in the room. To over time with me, stripping off their layers of clothes, showing their bodies in a way that was very embodied, stepping to the front of the class, sometimes right to my right, demoing exercises for me, which was not necessarily about their physicality. It was about their confidence. It was about being present in their body. It was about trusting themselves. It was about being aligned with who they are and sort of coming out from behind a shadow. All the things all the things in fitness that are not about fitness. And that whole time I was thinking, I have to do this. I have to make this happen, but in a business environment. I really had an appetite for I wanted to be in a business context, with suits and car service and, badges to get me through doorways, all the things that made me feel like I was going to be a grown-up. And so I spent a year pursuing what that might look like, because it sure as hell wasn't going to be working as an analyst in a windowless cubicle on the 12th floor in downtown San Francisco for 10 years. And so I learned about something called the world of training and development, which even before that was called industrial psychology. And inside of industrial psychology, which now we think of as organizational development, I learned about something called training and development. Now we call it learning and development. Training and learning are sort of different and very specific tracks. And I started to meet people who were in the world of sales training, who were in the world of, we didn't even have the language of leadership development yet, because it was really about specific skills, not necessarily about leadership. And I started to talk to folks who were in that world. And all the while, I was talking to my fitness group classes about my journey, telling stories into the microphone when I was stretching everyone at the end of class, or, at the low moments in the beginning, sort of narrating my story week over week about how miserable I was in these interviews and how what my dreams really were and what I learned that week about where my dreams actually fit and what the territory was where I could pursue them. And one day, about a year into it, hard year with moments of sadness and despair, feeling like I'd never find something that mattered to me, feeling like I'd be trapped teaching classes, although I loved it, feeling like this was as good as it was going to get. One day, a woman friend, who is now a friend, a woman who was taking my class, who I didn't really have a relationship with at that time, got off of one of her spinning bikes. This is the early days of spinning. It was like 94 or something. And she got off her bike and she walked up to me and she said, at the end of class, and she said, I thought she was going to ask me a fitness question. And she said, you know what? I'm an executive coach for a guy who teaches communications to large groups inside of large businesses, brands you'd recognize. And he's looking for basically a protege. He's looking for somebody to bring onto his team because he's just landed a few contracts and he needs more people to learn his IP and teach it on behalf of his organization around the world. And I think he would love you. I had no idea what the hell that meant. But after a few email exchanges, I had an opportunity to sit down with him face to face. He was actually in New York. I was in California. We had a lunch date, and I met him in Sausalito, and we had a conversation about what he does. And I was really fascinated. What he did was basically teach storytelling inside of organizations as a tool to help folks get clear, not do info dumps, on their teams, to help clarify their strategies, where they needed to go so that they could move their businesses forward, and to also deliver those stories in a way that were very aligned to who they are, to help them grow their impact by speaking clearly and compellingly. And I was like, it had a performance aspect to it. It was, kind of those high stakes moments. And so I was like, that's very interesting to me. And he said, well, I thought, I'd love to do that. He said, well, you don't know that until you see it. So why don't you come with me and one of my colleagues, and we're going to teach a class in a couple of weeks, actually in California, and I'll set you up, you sign an NDA, we'll get you a badge, you can come and you can watch the class under one circumstance, and that is you are not allowed to talk the entire time. And this is in the day when learning and development events were 3-day long events. It wasn't like a 2-hour class here and a just-in-time video training there. It was, or a half a day session here. It was a full-on 3-day class where this company, one that you recognize, one that you have some of the electronic components of the devices that you have in your home include what they make right now. Global company, 45,000 employees. And I went to his 3-day class on presenting skills, which was part of their compulsory leadership development for folks who were director level who wanted to continue to ascend in the business. It was going to be a 3-day event where this gentleman and his colleague were going to co-teach a double-sized class for one day and then break out the second 2 days into smaller classes, and I was going to observe. It was all director level folks in finance, and at that time, their CFO. So you can imagine the power dynamics in the room with people who had never met him, but only seen him maybe over teleconferencing, which we'd call teleconferencing then, had heard his voice on shareholder calls, had never met him directly, and they were going to all be presenting in front of him, and he was going to be presenting in front of them and getting live coached. Like that's high stakes for folks, because hierarchies, whether we like it or not, freaking matter in organizations. They matter to people. So I went and watched the class, and I was awestruck. I was so compelled by this work. All I could think of was, if I don't get to do this, I'm going to die. Like I haven't wanted something that bad except a handful of times in my life. It was so clear to me that standing at the front of the room and facilitating what happened in that session was my future. The impact that working with people in this way had individually on the leaders that they were coaching, along with how it tied very directly to the success of the business, was shocking. I remember feeling almost nauseous, just overcome with like desire to do that work. Well, he went his way. He and his colleague went his way. I went my way, and we agreed to talk later. And in that time, I had been talking a lot to my family, particularly my grandparents, about what I wanted to do. And my grandfather could not understand. I actually don't know why I'm throwing this part in, but I think I'm throwing this part in because sometimes when we go to pursue our dreams, they can run up against the expectations and values of the people that know and love you, people that maybe have supported you. And it can take a lot of courage and inner fortitude to hold your own vision in the face of maybe that pushback or that resistance or those questions. And I had, particularly from my grandparents, my grandfather, a lot of pushback and confusion. He was like, why don't you go get a job at the local bank? You know? Like, why would you want to pursue something where you're going to be on airplanes all the time? Why would you want to pursue something that doesn't have a big guarantee attached to it? His values and my values at that moment were going in different directions. And I had a choice whether I was going to do what I should do and what was expected, or if I was really going to follow this thing that had no clear path. Well, I had some decisions to make, and I made the decision that I was going to pursue it and that I was going to take the heat that came with it from my social and family circle. And I got this gentleman who I watched his class on the phone finally. He was actually in Iceland when we were on a call. I don't know if he'll even remember that. We still talk today. I never sent him a resume. He didn't ask for one. He only asked me for a writing sample. So I shared with him a brochure that I had written for a summer dance camp I had put together to try to hustle some cash in that the previous summer. I was 25 years old. And I got on the phone and I said, did you get my brochure? He said, yeah, you're a really good writer. I said, well, thanks. But I don't want to be a writer. What I'm interested in, what I didn't know is that he was really asking for a writing sample, not to see if I could write, but to see if I could put together a compelling story. If I could not just find words, but find the ideas and hang them together in the right order where it would matter. And on the call, I mustered my courage and I made the ask that I needed to make. That was, you want to talk about high stakes moments. It felt really high stakes for me. I asked him very clearly, I said, thank you so much. Here's the thing. I want to do what you're doing. I want to do what you're doing. And I know that I have the capability of doing it, but I don't know how yet. And I'm so compelled by the work that you do. And I trust that I can learn it. And I will basically do whatever it takes. And so I'm asking you today, will you teach me? And after a moment of silence, he said, yes. He sent me the contract. And a week later, I was on an airplane, met him in New York, and the rest is history. Very quickly, I found myself traveling around the world, delivering workshops, doing one-on-one coaching, completely out of my depth. But I got to move forward with my dream using an ask that felt way bigger than me. I mean, I did in my heart, I knew that I could do the thing that he was doing if I had somebody to teach me and that I would work my ass off to do it. But I also wasn't going to pretend that I already knew how to do it. I wasn't going to fake it till I made it. I was going to ask to be mentored and taught. And in that ask, there was an offer, which was that I was going to listen. I was going to learn. I was going to stretch. And so it was a yes that he was able to give me. And it changed the trajectory. I mean, within, I guess, 15 months, I was teaching my own classes to people who were twice my age, twice my tax bracket, and twice my experience, which was really, really wild. I remember once I was in a small town outside of Salt Lake City teaching a class for Intel Corporation. And it was a 3-day class. It was a really tough crowd. And I remember one woman in the room leaned over to me during one of our breaks and she said, "You're doing great. Just keep going." Which was just the kind of nudge I needed. So I'm sharing that with you because I know how hard it is to make asks that feel like you're almost like the world is going to say, "How dare you? You don't belong here. Who do you think you are? Why should I say yes to you? Show me your credentials before you're allowed to even make the asks." And I think over and over again, when we only make the asks that we feel like we're allowed to make, we only make incremental steps forward. But when we make the kinds of asks that we feel super compelled by, in fact, the kinds of asks that freak us out. And let me tell you, the day I asked my mentor, who's now my mentor, the day I made that ask, I felt freaked out. But here's the thing, the kinds of asks we make, they live in our zone of freaking out. If you've worked with me before, you know that term. But the kinds of asks that have the most potential are the ones that actually live in that zone of freaking out. So if you have an ask right now that you feel like is, hi Melanie, nice to see you, thank you. I think I can wave at you, that you feel like can be a game changer for you, whether it's a financial one, whether it's about renegotiating something in a relationship, a business relationship that you have. I don't care if they're investors or landlords or business partners. Go for it. Go for it. But we've got to go for it with a disposition of generosity, of authenticity, of empathy for the person on the other side of the table. And we can do that by knowing that you're going to make that big, courageous ask. And if it doesn't get the yes that you need to leap you closer to your dreams, that there will be another opportunity. The ask that I made that day to my mentor was a really high stakes, important ask. And if he had said no, if we could not have moved forward, my next job, my next step would have been to find the next person that had the potential to partner with me to help me fulfill my dreams. It would not have been for me to get off my horse and go home. So it's my story for the day. If you like to reach out to me, you can find me at diabondi.com. You can also check out my project at asklikeanauctioneer.com. And I'm so glad that you joined me today. And I hope that you join me again on my teeny tiny YouTube channel. All right. That's it for the day. Goodbye.